Over the last couple of days, we have gotten some news and comments made by certain people that have sparked some pretty insane trade rumors, and it feels like we are heading into a season where we could potentially see multiple blockbuster trades involving superstars, some of the best players in the entire league. Now, I don't want to get my hopes up too much because as NHL fans, when we do that, we are usually left pretty disappointed, but I still thought it would be fun to make a video going over some NHL stars that could potentially be traded this upcoming season. As always, I want to know what you guys are thinking, so be sure to sound off down below in the comments. Let me know how you're feeling about some of these trade rumors. And if this is your first time checking out the channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button if you want more NHL content just like this. We are trying to hit 84,000 subscribers before the season starts. And with that all being said, let's go ahead and start the video off with the big one, Sidney Crosby. For years, I never really bought into any of the Sidney Crosby trade rumors. When he signed his 2-year extension that kicks in this season back in September of 2024, I figured that likely meant Sidney Crosby would retire as a Penguin, because at the time he signed that extension, the Penguins had already missed the playoffs in back-to-back seasons. Things really weren't trending in the right direction. But now, based off some of the comments made by Sidney Crosby's agent and Crosby himself, I'm not so sure. In regard to Crosby potentially leaving Pittsburgh, his agent Pat Brisson said this: "It's always a possibility, you know? It's been 3 years since Pittsburgh has made the playoffs. It all depends on how Sid is going to be and how the team is going to do. I believe that Sid should be playing playoff hockey every year." And Sidney Crosby himself had a lot to say about all of the trade speculation on a recent episode of the 32 Thoughts podcast. He was kind of an open book. It was refreshing to hear. I'm not going to read off everything Crosby said in the interview because it was a long one. If you haven't heard it yet, I recommend you go and give it a listen. But one thing that I found most interesting is what he said in regards to him always being linked to the Montreal Canadiens when it comes to trade rumors. And Crosby said, "To know that a team like that wants you, it's not the end of the world. It could be worse." In general, in the interview, it really just didn't sound like Sidney Crosby was a guy that is closed off to the idea of being traded whatsoever. At the end of the day, he's a gamer who wants to win. He wants to be in the playoffs every year. And I think it's safe to say at this point that the Pittsburgh Penguins are not going to be in a position to contend at any point throughout the remainder of Crosby's career. It's starting to feel like we're on a fast track to the inevitable, and that the inevitable is a Sidney Crosby trade is what would be best for both Crosby and the Penguins, as it would give Sidney Crosby the opportunity to go somewhere where he can contend for Stanley Cups to finish out his NHL career, and it would also put the Pittsburgh Penguins rebuild into high gear. I mean, just imagine the kind of haul that they would be able to get for Sidney Crosby in a trade, even at this point in his career. Moving on now to the next player on my list, there really hasn't been a whole lot of speculation when it comes to this player, so I'm kind of just throwing this one out there. Kyle Connor of the Winnipeg Jets, someone who has been one of the most consistent goal scorers in the NHL over the last 8 seasons. He's coming off of a season where he set a new career high with 97 points. The Winnipeg Jets as a team are obviously coming off of a very good regular season where they finished first place in the entire NHL, winning the President's Trophy with 116 points. They're a team that is going to be looking to contend again this season, so why would they trade their best offensive player in Kyle Connor? Well, my whole thing is, do you run the risk of having the same thing happen with Kyle Connor that just happened with Nikolai Ehlers? Losing both of those guys in back-to-back off seasons would be catastrophic for a team like the Jets. Now, obviously, I think the Jets front office would be just fine with starting the season without a Kyle Connor extension in place if they have some sort of indication that Kyle Connor wants to re-sign long-term in Winnipeg and has no plans on hitting the open market next July. But if for 1 second things start to go sideways, whether that's in contract negotiations between the Jets and Connor or in the first half of the Jets season, maybe they don't have the season that they're hoping for, and we start to get closer and closer to the trade deadline and Kyle Connor still has not signed an extension, I feel like at that point the Jets would be doing themselves a huge disservice if they don't at least entertain the idea of a potential Kyle Connor trade. Moving on now to the next player on my list, we have Martin Necas of the Colorado Avalanche. It's pretty crazy that he's being included in a video like this already after less than half a season with the Avalanche, but here we are. After being dealt to Colorado as part of the Mikko Rantanen trade, Martin Necas with the Avalanche looked like a match made in heaven. He finished with 28 points in 30 regular season games for the Avalanche. He was a great fit as a winger on the top line with Nathan MacKinnon, and yet despite those very promising results, there have already been rumors that Martin Necas isn't exactly thrilled with how things have went in Colorado. And if that is the case, you gotta think the reason for that has to be that Martin Necas is still dead set on wanting to prove himself at the center position, which is something that he felt he never really got to do in Carolina, and in the 30 games he played with the Avalanche this past season, he didn't really get much of an opportunity to play center either. He started at the center position for one game while Nathan MacKinnon was out with a minor injury, and it didn't last longer than 2 periods. Necas is somebody who's heading into the final year of his contract this season. He's set to become an unrestricted free agent next summer, and we saw how quick Colorado was to pull the trigger on a Mikko Rantanen trade when things went south in those contract negotiations, and Mikko Rantanen was a fan favorite in Colorado, a homegrown talent, one of the better players in franchise history. He had won a Stanley Cup there, so I can't imagine they're going to have more patience with a guy like Martin Necas. Moving on now to the next player on my list. This is an obvious one. Rasmus Andersson, defenseman for the Calgary Flames. Rasmus Andersson is somebody who has had his name involved in trade rumors for well over a year now. It feels inevitable that he will be traded at some point between now and the deadline as he's heading into the final year of his contract. Calgary Flames captain Michael Backlund literally said himself that he thinks it's pretty obvious Andersson is going to get traded. There were some rumors going around that Andersson would only sign an extension with one team, but Andersson has since shot those rumors down. His exact quote was, "The thing that bothers you is fake information that comes out. I saw some reports that I would only sign with one team and this and that. I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. Craig Conroy and I have had a few conversations over the summer, and I would never handcuff him and give him one team." That team was rumored to be Vegas, shocker, and whether he ends up being traded to Vegas or somewhere else, I think if you're a Flames fan, right now the best thing you can hope for is that Rasmus Andersson comes out of the gates hot and plays really well to start the season and bolsters his trade value, because he is coming off of a pretty disappointing season for his standards where he finished with just 31 points and was a team worst -38. Moving on now to the next player on my list of NHL stars who could be traded this season, we have the second Penguin of the video, Erik Karlsson. Karlsson is somebody whose name was thrown around in trade rumors a lot last season, and if the Penguins are bad again this season, which a lot of people are expecting them to be, myself included, I imagine Karlsson's name is going to be brought up in trade rumors again. Now that being said, a Karlsson trade wouldn't necessarily be the easiest thing for the Penguins to pull off. For one, he has a full no move clause, so it's not like he'd just accept a trade anywheres. And two, he's still signed for 2 more seasons, and even with the San Jose Sharks already retaining $1.5 million, his cap hit is still $10 million. And it's not like he's been bad in Pittsburgh. He's had back-to-back 50-plus point seasons for them. He's still a very, very good offensive defenseman, an elite power play quarterback, but definitely not a guy who's worth $10 million per season at this point in his career. And even with the cap on the rise, a $10 million cap hit would be very difficult for any contending team to bring on. And a contending team is likely the only kind of team Erik Karlsson would want to be traded to. So if a Karlsson trade were to happen, you have to imagine the Penguins would almost certainly have to retain a decent chunk of his salary, and is that something they'd want to do for a guy who, again, still has 2 more years left on his deal? I guess we'll have to wait and see. And now finally, finishing up the video with the last player on my list, we have Kirill Kaprizov of the Minnesota Wild. This is a pretty crazy situation for the Wild. The other day it was reported that Kaprizov and his camp turned down an extension offer from the Minnesota Wild of 8 years for $128 million. A deal that would have made Kaprizov the highest paid player in NHL history in both AAV and total dollars. After this news broke, the trade rumors started right away. There was a report from a Russian media outlet that the Wild have asked Kirill Kaprizov for his list of teams he would accept a trade to. That report has since been shot down, and the Wild insists that they have not asked Kaprizov for a trade list and will remain focused solely on an extension. That is from RG Media, who also report that Kaprizov's camp is looking to push for a record-setting cap percentage of nearly 20%, which would be something in the range of 18 to 19 million per season. For those of you who don't know, 20% of the cap is the most a player can sign for. So if Kaprizov gets what he's looking for here, it would be legitimately a max contract. And I guess that's good news for the Wild in the sense that it sounds like Kaprizov didn't turn down that 8-year, $128 million offer because he just doesn't want to sign in Minnesota. It sounds like he just wants more money. It's going to be fascinating to see if the Wild are willing to go that far on an extension with Kaprizov. He is legitimately one of the best players in the world. If the Wild aren't willing to meet those demands from Kaprizov, though, their focus would most definitely have to shift to looking at potential trades, because a team like the Minnesota Wild can absolutely not afford to lose a player like Kirill Kaprizov in free agency and get nothing in return. So that is going to wrap up today's video, going over a list of NHL stars who could potentially be traded this season. As always, I want to know what you guys are thinking, so be sure to sound off down below in the comments. Let me know how you're feeling. If you made it all this way to the end of the video and you ended up enjoying yourself, please remember to leave a like. It's the best way to let me know that you enjoyed, and it does help out the videos a ton. And most importantly, if this was your first time checking out the channel and you want more NHL content just like this all year round, be sure to hit that subscribe button, and I will talk to you all again soon.